Hi folks, welcome to this video on social facilitation. Quite a big topic this. It definitely lends itself to, longer answer questions in the paper, but equally, you could get a question on this topic worth 2, 3, 4, 5 marks, something like that, based on one particular aspect of it. So let's go through it. So we are going to get through quite a bit of information, but I'm going to try and make it as concise as possible. First of all, what is social facilitation? Well, it's the influence of others on your performance. Now, social facilitation, its actual title is other people having a positive impact on your performance, whereas social inhibition is other people having a negative impact on your performance. Make sure you know those. Two definitions should be worth 2 marks in most questions. Now, when we say the word others, who are we talking about? And when we say impact on their performance, are we talking about playing with good teammates? Because, of course, they should enhance your performance, or playing with poor teammates because they're going to have a negative impact on your performance. Well, we're not. We're talking about the others are 2 main categories. The audience, so the impact an audience, spectators will have on your performance, but also this lady shooting, co-actors. She's a co-actor because she's watching. She's a co-actor because she's watching. She's a co-actor and she's a co-actor. So people, teammates and opponents watching. That's the key thing. Social facilitation is the impact of others watching your performance, and they can either be the audience or the spectators or fellow competitors. Now I'm going to get the pronunciation of this wrong and offend him or her, right? But Ziyong, I presume that's how you pronounce it, is a psychologist who's done a lot of work on this. Now you've seen this before, I'm sure you have. Drive theory. So we looked at this when we looked at theories of arousal. As arousal increases, so does performance. Within reason. That's what we're going to look at now. So Jung took this idea, this drive theory, and applied it to social facilitation, i.e., does drive theory have a positive impact on your performance or a negative impact on your performance? Well, what Jung says is the presence of an audience and co-actors, so spectators and teammates and competitors, increases your arousal level. So your arousal is going to get higher. And if you remember exactly what drive theory was, it wasn't that performance improves, it's that as arousal increases, you're more likely to produce your dominant response. Remember, the dominant response is how you typically perform a skill. So what Jung says is, if the skill is simple or gross, and or the performer is an expert, the dominant response is likely to be correct. So that's what's going to have, they're going to have a positive impact. And if we can write this down now, let's just get my pen on. I apologise. You know what's happening here. My absolutely appalling handwriting. Social facilitation is going to occur if the skill is simple or gross and the performer is an expert, because if the arousal is high, the dominant response is likely to be correct. Whereas I'm going to get social inhibition in this scenario here. Now, what is this scenario? Well, if the skill is complex or fine and the performer is a novice, the dominant response is likely to be incorrect. I know I haven't explained this well, so I'm going to try and improve on it. So what I'm saying is, the crowd, the audience, the co-actors, they're going to increase your arousal level. The bigger the crowd, the noisier you are, the more your arousal level is going to increase. So we are definitely going to see your dominant response. If the skill is simple or gross and or the performer is an expert, that dominant response is likely to be correct. So if the skill is simple or gross, or the performer is an expert, or both, they're going to want a big audience. They're going to want a big audience watching them because they're going to want a high arousal level, because that's going to lead to a correct dominant response, i.e. we're going to get social facilitation. The crowd has had a positive impact on your performance. However, if this crowd increases your arousal level and the skill is complex or fine, or the performer is a novice, your arousal is still going to increase to high levels, but your dominant response is likely to be incorrect, and that is going to lead to social inhibition. So, gross skills, experts want big crowds because their dominant response is going to be correct. Fine skills or complex skills and inexperienced performers, they're going to want low or small crowds because their dominant response is likely to be incorrect. We're going to come back to Jung in a couple of minutes' time anyway, so I'll recap that again. There's another theory associated with the effect of an audience, a crowd on performance, and that's evaluation apprehension theory. So what we've got here is, it was Cottrell, I think, who came up with this and said, actually, it's not simply the presence of a crowd that increases arousal levels, like Jung has just said. Very often, many performers like to have a crowd. It calms them down. I'm sure, often, it's the anticipation that's worse that is worse than the actual event. Sorry, getting the words out. So you can be sat in the changing rooms, panicking, worrying, and as soon as you get out in front of the crowd, you kind of calm down because it's like, right, the event's happening now. So Cottrell says it's not just about the crowd that can increase the arousal level. The arousal increases when the performer feels like they're being analysed or evaluated or judged by the crowd or specific audiences. Classic example here are scouts. Someone's come down to scout you, maybe looking, to give you an international cap or sign you to another club or sign you from, lower league or sign you up to a pro club for the first time. The audience members who evaluate, e.g. talent scouts, may make performers feel anxious. I should say feel anxious, particularly if they are inexperienced. So that can be a good thing or a bad thing. I've worked at a few pro clubs in my years, particularly academy and youth team level. And we've had situations where England scouts have come down to have a look, England under 21 scouts. Do you tell that player? That's always been the conversation that's taken place. Do you tell him that the England scout has come down to watch him? And there is no right or wrong answer. It's not always yes, it's not always no. You've got to know the personality type, the level of your performance, so you can make a good judgment call on that. And sometimes you feel like you've got it wrong, sometimes you feel you've got it right. Would you prefer to know that someone's come down to watch you or not? Because you might try and force something to happen because you've been watched, it go wrong, in which case the audience members have social inhibition on you, or you might be inspired by that person coming on to watch you and have an absolute blinder, in which case that's had social facilitation. So the intention of that audience member, are they evaluating you, and your experience level, that can affect it as well. Now I'm going to rifle through this bit because I think it's bland and boring, but we need to get the key points down. So there's like 2 or 3 slides here now where I'm just going to rifle through, but there is some repetition. So don't worry, it's not all brand new stuff. Now, other factors affecting social facilitation. So could we have facilitation, a positive impact, or inhibition, a negative impact? Well, home and away, whether you're playing at home or away. Now, this is just a fact. Teams win more games at home than away across all sports and across all levels, but it's not by much. It's something like 52% to 48%. There's not a massive home field advantage. But why do we definitely see on average an increase in terms of victories for the home team? Well, generally the crowd are more supportive. It's a familiar surroundings. It's your changing room, it's your dressing room, it's your pitch, court, track, whatever, swimming pool. And often the home crowd are hostile to your opponents. They boo them, they jeer them. So, that can all have a positive impact to social facilitation on your performance. However, why do we often see the home team lose? Well, when you're playing at home, there's greater expectations. And also, there's more evaluation apprehension. That crowd see you every week and they're evaluating your performance in terms of how you played last week, the week before, the best you've ever played for that club or that team. So those can both have negative impacts on your performance. So what we can definitely say is that these 3 lead to social facilitation, but these 2 can also lead to social inhibition. Also, personality type can influence it. So think back to the stuff we did on personality type. Type A people, high anxiety people, they're just going to perform less well in front of others because they're naturally anxious anyway. So stick them in front of a crowd, that's going to have a negative impact on their performance. Whereas the type B people, low anxiety level, you're going to perform better in front of a crowd because you're not that anxious anyway. So the crowd are not going to increase your anxiety above and beyond a certain level. So, again, we can see a social inhibition effect here and a social facilitation effect here. Also within personality type, don't forget we looked at extroverts and introverts. Extroverts, remember, you extroverts have quite low internal arousal, so you naturally seek out high arousal environments. So you're going to want bigger crowds. That's going to raise your game. Whereas introverts, you're quite high. You've got quite high internal arousal anyway. So you're going to prefer smaller crowds because they don't want to increase. You don't want to increase your arousal above and beyond a certain level because that's going to have a negative impact on your performance. So all these things will have an impact. And there's more factors to come, but it's fairly common sense stuff now. The level of experience, so previous experience in front of a crowd. If you've had good previous experiences, you've played well in front of crowds, it's likely to have a social facilitation effect on you in the future. Good players generally thrive in big crowd situations. That's why they want to play at World Cups and things like that, because that's where the bigger crowds are. Whereas bad previous experience, you're likely to have social inhibition. So your level of experience can impact that. But also, here it is, so Yonk again, I reference your skill level. So, experienced players are likely to have social facilitation because their dominant response is likely to be correct, whereas inexperienced players are likely to have social inhibition because their dominant response is likely to be incorrect when you've got a big crowd. And linking it to something else we've looked at, evaluation apprehension theory, the crowd's knowledge. If that crowd are quite knowledgeable, they know what they're looking for, they know what's good and what's bad, therefore that can lead to increased evaluation apprehension. So again, that could lead to a bit of social inhibition taking place. And also, performing in front of people you know can increase anxiety levels because they know your game inside and out, they know what your good standard is, what your poor standard is, and you know that as well. So that can increase anxiety levels, have a social inhibition effect. However, playing in front of friends, family, that can also inspire you a little bit. So that one can, again, go one of two ways. We're not saying definites, we're saying here's the factors that can affect, and here's why it's such a difficult thing to try and get right with performance, the size of crowds, the proximity, who's in the crowd, etc., etc. And again, other factors that can affect whether you get social facilitation or social inhibition come back to Zionk again, don't we? The types of skills or activities. So if the skills are gross, they require high levels of arousal for their best performance, so larger, noisier crowds. Hence why long jumpers, triple jumpers, some high jumpers, javelin throws will get the crowd clapping behind them to boost the arousal level. I want to know you're there because that's, their gross skills. Whereas fine and complex skills require lower levels of arousal for performance, so they want smaller, that should say quieter, not quitter. My spelling's been atrocious today, hasn't it? Small, I'm going to blame it on autocorrect. Smaller, quieter crowds. So at golf, when they're putting, they'll hold these quiet signs up, nice, quiet surroundings, environment, because they want fine and complex skills to be accurate. Therefore, they need lower levels of arousal. And finally, then, in terms of factors that can have an impact, the proximity of the crowd, so how close the crowd are to you. The closer the crowd is, the higher they increase arousal levels. The further away they are, the lower the arousal levels, which is often, Hampden Park, Scotland, often the debate about this, having athletics tracks around your football pitch. Like West Ham with the Olympic Stadium, they didn't want the athletics track, so they've put, removable seating in there. That crowd are further away from the teams. Now that, in instance, might benefit the away fans because the away team don't want a hostile crowd on their back, but they've not got it. There's 8 lanes of athletics tracks separating them, whereas the home crowd want their home support real close to them, for a social facilitation effect. But again, that's not going to happen either. So that can have an impact. And also the crowd noise. The noisier the crowd, the higher the arousal level. Again, it must be autocorrect, surely not me. The quieter the crowd, the lower the arousal levels. So if that crowd is further away, you're not going to have as much noise. If they're closer to you, you're going to have a lot higher noise levels. With these videos, before I come to this last slide now, with these videos, you can pause and rewind them, I'm sure you are. But, I would take everything we've just done over the last 3 slides and list it, mind map it, some turn into flashcards. What factors affect whether you're going to get social facilitation or social inhibition. There, I think it's massively unlikely you're going to get a question saying, what are factors in order to get social facilitation? Because you can't say that for definite. It's all theory. It depends on the personality type and the skill level and the size of the crowd and the proximity of the crowd. All those factors can influence it, but don't, point you definitely in one direction. What we want to do here is, just to finish off with, is look at the factors that what we want to minimize social inhibition. How can we stop the crowd having a negative impact on performance? Well, it's nothing new. It's everything we've just done, but turned on its head. So if the crowd is causing them a problem, learn to block out the crowd, get them training in front of an audience. Most clubs do it these days, don't they? Open training sessions at the start of pre-season. Yeah, it's good for getting TV coverage and media and sponsorship, but it's really good to get your new first year professionals or your new members to the club used to participating in front of an audience. Teach skills in a non-evaluative environment. So if they're worried about evaluation apprehension, being judged, well, get the skills down to a high level in a non-evaluative environment where there aren't people watching. So that gets rid of that. Encourage support from teammates. Now, as we've mentioned, the audience, spectators, they're watching you, they're come to analysing you. Now they might be supporting you or they might be on your back. But your co-actors, your teammates, they can support you, they can encourage you. So they're the ones that we have control of. They're the ones that can boost your performance. We can also reduce the importance of the event. How do we do that? We'll give debuts to first teamers or things like that in a game of lesser importance, not in a cup final, but mid-table game towards the end of the season where the result isn't as important. Give them their debut then, so you reduce the importance of the event. But also train these kids to a high standard so their dominant response is likely to be correct. That way, if there is a big crowd and they are making lots of noise and they have raised the arousal levels, the dominant response is likely to be correct anyway. And finally, encourage the use of relaxation techniques, things like mental rehearsal, picturing correct technique before the game. So when they go out, they've already done it. They've already done it correctly once. So now it's just a case of doing it correctly again. Hope you found this video useful, folks. Like I said, this is a big topic. So you could get a 3-mark question on evaluation apprehension theory, a 2 or 3-mark question on de Jong and what that says, including definitions of social facilitation or social inhibition. Or you could get a 10-marker, on this. What is it? What is social facilitation? What are the factors that can affect performance? In which case, it's all of this. And how could you minimize social inhibition? So please make sure you go through it bit by bit, turn it into flashcards. It's too much to remember in one big, massive chunk. Box it down a little bit into manageable chunks and get cracking with it.